All right. Well, welcome to the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate. It's December 9th. Rod Kuntz, Heidi in the house so far. Um, okay. So tonight's topic is use your voice. And as you know, those topics are predetermined. We try to give ourselves a little stimuli to start a conversation. And just so it's not a waste, not that it would be a waste, but I just want to touch on that briefly. But there's some other things that are on my heart to talk about tonight based on a series of conversations I've had in the last couple of days, up to and including my podcast with Heidi. So we're going to go. So use your voice as it relates to being in business. This just hit me like a ton of bricks. I remember I was 18 years old, very, very good at my job, very cocky in life. I probably stem from athleticism and brothers and all the other things and making good money. And I always had an opinion. And I remember this is when I was at In-N-Out Burger. They have their own In-N-Out University. If you've never heard of that before, In-N-Out has its own university where you actually go to school through the 4 different levels of management. And the time in that school is determined by the role that you're going to be playing. I actually taught some classes there on the history of the company, which were really cool to do, and also impressed upon me the importance of teaching culture and company history as it relates to why we do things. Anyways, I really, really respected the teacher, and his name was Jack. And I remember Jack pulling me aside one day. He says, Jim, you're going to excel in this career. You're going to excel in this job. I know it comes easy for you because of the training that you've had, but you could basically shut the F up once in a while. And I said, what? He goes, you're too opinionated at the wrong time, wrong place. And even after listening to him tell me that, I still had my own opinion about that, but it resonated with me. I realized that I didn't know what I didn't know. I was a new kid on the block, and although I was good at my job, I did not have the life experiences that he recognized, and he needed to get it through my thick skull in a abrasive manner so that I would listen. And I did. And I stopped using my voice the way that I had in my short time period of training with him at the university. And it served me well because sometimes we speak up when we shouldn't, we say things that we shouldn't, and sometimes we insert ourselves in ways that we shouldn't. And oftentimes that's through our voice. But that being the downside of using our voice, just to talk about the upside a little bit, is that there is a lot of value and a lot of strength to be had in sharing your perspective or your knowledge or your ability or your way of doing something by using your voice with your peers and colleagues, with your family and friends, so that you can bring value to the conversation or value to what you're trying to do. And, our voice is a tool. And oftentimes we're hesitant to use that tool because we're embarrassed at what we might say or how that might come across, or gosh, they know more than I do. The reality is that we all become contributing members to the equation, and oftentimes your voice is more important than you might imagine. And I learned this quite a bit in the last, I don't know, I'm sure those on the call right now that have older kids, you can learn an awful lot from your kids and their perspective in conversation. Mine are 9 and 11 now. And we sit around at the dinner table. We talk about things that we're doing or we're going to do or where we're going to go. And I try to consciously ask them, hey guys, what do you think? What's your opinion? What did you guys learn, or what input do you want to give on this? And allow everybody the chance to use their voice. And in learning or in listening to them, I've learned from them. And it just accentuates how important the use of our voice is and the value that it brings to any conversation, regardless of your experience, your age, your background, where you come from, and even your ability to articulate something. So a lot of times people don't use their voice because they're afraid, well, I don't sound very smart. That's not important how you sound. It's important that you contribute in any way that you can. And sometimes, in my opinion, it's better if you're not using that, I don't know, master's degree English language skills to bring to the table, because most people don't understand that anyhow. And when you communicate with people, if you want to be heard clearly, use the voice or the, I don't know, the level of a second or third grader, so that it's very clear, it's bullet pointed, and it's simple. And don't try to impress people with your language skills. So our voice can be a powerful tool, all the way leading up to leadership and the ability to even get on a stage or host a meeting or command some attention or say a powerful prayer when needed. Your voice can be a powerful tool, and I'd highly recommend that you use it when you can for its intended purposes in a positive, constructive way. And also understand, as I articulated earlier, the damage that can be done with your voice as well. And words do matter. Words do matter. So that's all I'm going to say about the voice tonight. Rod, if you want to weigh in on that, go for it. But I'm going to take a left turn afterwards.
I love your left turns. But, you know, I guess because I'm still thinking about the podcast you did with Heidi and the vulnerability that was shared with her using her voice and telling her story. Um, we all have that story. And I have a similar story that you just shared, Jim. I had somebody, a lieutenant colonel in the Army, who once pulled me aside and said, you're just too confident. You're too cocky was the word he used. And he said, you just need to dial it back a little bit. And it's like, but I feel good, right? I feel confident. You're trying to, throw a wet blanket on my jam. And, but I took it to heart, and I won a national award, came out of the top of the nation in something. And it was shortly after he had given me that advice. So sometimes when we use our voice, we need to shut our ears or open our ears and shut our mouth. And that's the way we can best use our voice, to let some of that outside influence filter in and wait to talk. So, but what I wrote, I jotted a note here when you were talking, and it was about suffering, and everyone suffers. Everyone suffers. Your 9 and 11-year-old children suffer, right? They have their own sufferings. We all have stuff we deal with at every stage of our life. And so we have shared suffering. I mean, that's common ground for everybody. And that vulnerability, when you share your suffering, when you're using your voice to share in that suffering, I think it brings the value of authenticity. And it's hard to be vulnerable. It's hard to use your voice in a vulnerable way. I guess that's what I'm saying. I'm taking a spin on using your voice, because using your voice, we usually want to command a room and put the power behind it. But it's the shared suffering and the value of authenticity that really is using your voice. It's the heart that they're hearing and not the sound coming out of your mouth. And what a valuable lesson. And if we can teach that skill to everybody here in the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate, if we can teach that to our children, just to be real, that's the real power of our voice. So you take your left turn. That's that's where you led me.
Well, as typical for Rod and I, when I go to make those left turns, he's already a step ahead of me in the conversation, which if you listen to our podcast shows, that's what happens for every show the last 2 years. So Heidi, I'm glad you got a big smile on your face. I want to talk about that suffering. And so no surprise that you brought that up. What I want to talk about specifically, though, and this is for this group, and I'm sorry if you're not here live to add some input, but the recording's the important part that you are hearing this. I've had the opportunity, in the last several years through my podcast to interview people that have suffered and come out the other side through things that they've said yes to. I've had the opportunity in my consulting and coaching to hear a lot of personal tragedy that's turned into something significant, as well as people are still dealing with things in their life and going through that suffering. Matter of fact, I spent an hour and a half on the phone with a client this morning. It was supposed to be 30 minutes. New client turned into an hour and a half, hearing about the suffering that they've gone through. And what a great tool it is that we have to be able to talk on Zoom or cellular devices, or to be able to communicate with one another, so that we can convey our message of suffering in search of help and support. And so here's a few points on that. One is, I want everybody in business, because this is a business community, to understand that life does not go without hardships and suffering. We all go through that. And sometimes it's seasonal, sometimes it's yearly, sometimes it's just momentarily. But we don't go through this without some suffering and pain, anxieties, hardships, challenges, things that seem nearly impossible to overcome at the moment. But those are the important times to, and pardon the pun, back to the topic, use your voice, reach out, and ask for help. And know that, and I can say this with confidence, know that when you reach out and you are willing to be a little bit vulnerable for a moment in whatever it is you're going through, that there's somebody that will be on the other side of that. And maybe it might take a couple calls, but there will be somebody on the other side of that that is willing to help, has the knowledge and understanding to help, and get you on the other side. And what I want to be crystal clear about is that because of the suffering, because of the challenges, because of the obstacles that we're going through at that moment, it doesn't mean that we have to stop. It doesn't mean that we're not going to be able to achieve what we're going after. It doesn't mean that life ends in that moment. We will go on. We have been created in such a way by our Creator, my God, your God, that we can withstand the toughest of challenges and become stronger people through those challenges. I just interviewed a great individual. His name is Seth Stern. It'll be the show will come out next Thursday. You're going to get a little preview of the discussion. Seth Stern has become, since this last May, he's become successful enough where he doesn't have to live in his car anymore. Okay. And he is a professional photographer. He shoots for Boot Barn and a few of the Western brands as of the last few months. He can finally afford to put some furniture in a house. I don't know if he bought it or rented it, but he's basically has a place to live now besides his Prius. But one of the things that Seth was talking about is that although he's always had a focus on his faith in God, that he's going to walk him through the right doors, Seth has been constantly faced with challenges and obstacles to make even enough money to get out of his vehicle as his house. And he says, Jim, I think it brought me closer to God because I was suffering and I was so upset with God, what I was going through. I was doing all the right things. And I was listening to him and I was hearing his story. And then I turned back to him. I said, Seth, you just described something that so many of us aspire to have. And he's like, what's that? I said, a closer relationship with God. And I realized in that moment that a lot of us are going through some suffering. And when you can step back and look at it from a 30,000 foot level, like I'm doing, hearing his story, or like, Heidi, you shared your story so eloquently. When you look back at these things, the past is the past. It doesn't define who we are in the future or who we can be. But we grow and we learn from that. And when we can take those tools, those understandings, and apply it to our lives in the future, we become much better in all things. Better in our faith, better in our ability to help others, better to understand things that are happening, better to grow, better to build, better to go in a direction that you want to go in, that defines who you are from a values perspective, better at achieving our goals because we know what doesn't work and hopefully we know what will work. And better because maybe we're just smart enough and we've learned enough to ask for help from our community and the people around us, right? And so as we kind of navigate this big world of business and entrepreneurship understand that there is a lot of suffering, there's a lot of hardship, but there's a lot of gratitude and joy on the other side of that. And we're in the holidays now, and we see a lot of people, and we feel maybe we deserve different things, or life should be different because it's the holidays, and maybe it's not. Maybe it's not ideal. Know that those things will come by the constant pursuit of what you're desiring, having some patience, applying the tools that you have, and having the faith and discipline to walk that road for the long haul, not just in a moment. Because society gives us this cell phone and social media, we think we have to have this instant gratification, and it's just not the reality. And so I'm hoping that through a little bit of this sharing, a little bit of this discussion, that we take some of the pressure off ourselves and understand that there's a lot of people that are going through the same things with the same challenges. We just approach them differently. And we try to find the light in those things. And we try to not allow the past to define us. And, it's okay if you fail. We can always start over the next day, and get a clean slate. Matter of fact, you don't even have to wait for the day to be over. You can stop the day and say, you know what? I'm starting over right now, and just keep on going. I think it's one of the neat aspects of some of the programs out there, like using AA as an example, right? You're sober for a day, everybody celebrates. You're sober for a week, they celebrate again. Then you get your 30-day coin, then your 60-day coin. But when somebody falls off, they get to start over, and they get to be celebrated again. Hey, one day sober again, right? Nobody's condemning them for falling off. They're celebrating the success of one day sober again. And I really hope that we can look at our lives that way when it relates to business and our own successes and our own expectations, and know that there's still tomorrow to keep pushing. There's a lot of tools out there available to be able to do that. We've got a number of tools, but there's a lot of great books. There's a lot of great podcasts. There's a lot of great coaches out there to leverage and lean in if you're willing to ask, use your voice, ask for help, ask for references, ask for tools, ask for ways to get it done. And I hope that, in 2025, and we can start this now when you hear this, is to lean in on community and lean in on, others that are out there that are willing to help and be vulnerable, and that we can also be of value to other people as well. Going back to Seth's story, he's leaving to go to NFR tomorrow, which is the National Finals for Rodeo in Las Vegas. It's the biggest rodeo event that happens in the world, and it goes on for 2 weeks. And he's super excited about going. He's got a hotel room, and all these things. And he's been patient, and he's doing all the things. And he has, he even said, he's like, Jim, there's been a lot of tears in this process. Like, well, what do those tears look like exactly? And he kind of walked us through some of those tears. And it's just amazing to hear and think about our own stories. And I'd encourage you to do the same. Look at your own stories. Look at how far you've come and the successes that you've had, and your wins, and know that you've had growth in your life, and that there's a tremendous amount of value in that growth. I want to describe real quick, just because it resonated with me. I asked Seth, I said, what was the first cowboy photo you took? And he says, well, I've taken photos before, but the first photo that I took of a cowboy that I really felt like it was the beginning of my career. He goes, it was actually the life-changing moment in my career. He was living in his car, driving from LA, which he moved out of, he was on his way to Wyoming, and he was somewhere in Utah, and he was utilizing the McWi-Fi at McDonald's. Free internet. By the way, professional tip. He said it too, but I already knew this. McDonald's has the best Wi-Fi out there, because nobody realizes that they have it and it's available for you to use. Everybody's at Starbucks or Black Rifle using their Wi-Fi. Go to McDonald's, you can get better Wi-Fi. You can even do it in the parking lot. Anyways, he was using some McWi-Fi, and he said he saw 5 black cowboys walk in, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, this is my chance. I got to get out of my, my vulnerable zone here. I got to be bold, and I got to walk over to these guys." And I can tell Seth's not really a big guy, and he says self-professed. He's not a cowboy. He's a cowboy photographer, although he does dress Western. He said he walked up to me. He said, "Hey, I'm a cowboy photographer. I'd like to take your photos. I'm not here for very long. Can I shoot you guys?" And they said yes. And he said, I arrived at their ranch the following morning at 5 a.m. He said it was 35 degrees. And he goes, the gracefulness in which these guys were preparing for a saddle ride, a trail ride. He said the sun was rising. The breath you could see coming out of their mouths because the temperature and the horses were steaming. And he says the light was absolutely perfect. He says those photos still define him to this day. And by the way, I don't think it's been that long. I think it's been like 6 months. But he says those photos define my career. They changed my entire life because of that moment. And because of that moment, because of his boldness, after all the suffering, he was able to find success. And I can't wait to go to his website and look at those photos again with a different light, literally. Because I saw him, I know what he was talking about, but I didn't look at him as these are his first and the setup of those photos. And it just was such a beautiful depiction of finding that success after so much suffering and what that looks like. And as he's talking about going to Vegas this week. And by the way, what I also loved about him is he says, I'm going to Vegas. It doesn't represent my values because what's important to me. But I do know that that's where all the Cowboys are at this week. And he was referring to his faith in God, and Vegas is, of course, they call it Sin City. So he's excited to go and all the other things. So I look forward to you hearing that podcast when it comes out. But I thought it was a perfect example of suffering culminating into the perfect photo of what it looks like on the other side of that. So I just felt compelled to share this tonight after having a few lengthy conversations today, and including your conversation, Heidi, that we had on our podcast. And I shared some of my story about my mom being an alcoholic for 30 years. Matter of fact, I told my mom the other night, I drove her to my daughter's ballet. I said, hey, I used your story on a podcast. And she's like, oh, which one? I said, the one when I was 12 and you made me drive you to the liquor store to buy a 12-pack of beer because you wanted to get drunk again. She's like, I don't remember that. I did that? I said, yep. She goes, I must have been drunk. I said, yeah, you were. And you wanted to be drunker. So I had to drive you to get more beer. And she laughed. And of course, when we look back at those things, they're terrible moments to think about, but yet she's on the other side of that 33 years. She reminded me 33, not 30 years of sobriety. And so, we both grew through that pain, and I am who I am because of my mom. And I don't think about, that terrible decision she made to ask me to drive at 12 years old, although I was a pretty good driver from ranch driving. I imagine probably anybody else on this phone call that's lived that. Rod, I bet you were a pretty good driver at 12. Heidi, you probably were too.
Jim, I got my first ticket when I was 12.
Oh, thank you. There
My
you go.
mother was furious. So
there
yes.
you go. Right. So, you think about those things, but I don't look at those as defining moments in my life. I look at the time that I spent with my mom, single mom at the time, laying on the couch. I was probably 6, 7, 8, 9, watching Johnny Carson or Carol Burnett. I know if you're young, you don't even know what these names are, but the point is that we had a lot of tender moments that resonated with me. A lot of people ask me, where did my personality come from? Well, I had the pleasure of being raised by a single mom till I was 12 that was very loving and nurturing despite her alcoholism. And there was a lot of moments being taught how to cook in the kitchen, how to enjoy one's company on the couch, even if it was as simple as watching a TV show. We always sat down and had dinner together at the table, things like that. And then, of course, I moved in with my dad and I learned all the other bad shit that you can learn, right? How to be tough, how to throw a hammer and fight and all those other things. And I don't know, maybe I'm the mix of both. But, you don't look back at those times of trouble. You remember the good things, and just know that some of the suffering only has to be temporary. So, um, Rod, do you want to weigh in on that a little bit? And Heidi, if you've got some comments, I'd love to hear from you too, being on the show tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I'll go first and then turn it over to Heidi. But you brought up 2 points, and it's important both for our personal lives as well as, and especially for our business lives, or our business lives, and especially for our personal lives. And that's patience. Even with the story you just told, we hear that all the time. We have to be patient because we're always in a hurry. We want things done right now. But we forget to tell people that along with patience, patience doesn't work by itself. Patience requires a partner, and that partner is persistence. That persistence means you still have to put in effort. So while you're being patient, you still have to perform. You still have to perform the action. And I was thinking about that because we just came off of Thanksgiving, a week and a half ago here, and we booked a special place, and it was like I said before, a movie, a Hallmark movie with our whole family there. And we're going around the room talking about what we're thankful for. And my wife said, she started crying and she said, "I'm so thankful for this." She said, "Because I never had this growing up." She was in terribly abusive relationships. Just her life was a life of misery. And she said, "I never had this." She said, "So I had to create it. I had to create it." So she was not just patient, she was persistent. And she spent 60 years creating the life she has now. But it's hard. And we have to do the work.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I was reminded because I thought that sounds something I've read before. And it's because it's in my book. Not the story, but the patience and persistence. It follows.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I guess I've heard it somewhere.
Well, and by the way, that's a testament to the things that we read give us some good inputs that we're able to apply naturally, right? I've read your book a couple times. We're applying it. Heidi, any comments or value you want to bring to the table?
Yeah, thank you. This is fantastic. It's very equal in some ways of going to an AA meeting. This meeting this today.
I've been.
Yeah, and yeah, I went to one today, so I was grateful. Before the call, what came to me organically was this. It's taken me a long time, I'm 51, to develop the level of consistency and adherence to my health, my workout regimens. It's just like breathing air and drinking water to me. It's without effort. And that's a lifetime. And then I was thinking about, before getting on this call, about business, and in my nature, my personality, I want what I want yesterday.
Yeah,
And then
we all do.
I get riled up. I get vicious. I go, and then I get tripped up, or worry was the last our meeting last week. All those places, right? All those things, those come out. So before the call, I just took a deep breath and was able to recognize, like, what we were just talking about. It's, patience, but then also that place of action. So it hit me like, for me to develop to the level that I see myself being in business, is awesome, because I have a very big goal, a very effective and efficient and enormous and well goal, but it's going to take a minute. It's going to take some time, just like developing this level of a physique or health or well-being or ability to have emotional intelligence at some level has taken a lot of time. So I came up with that. And then, one of my favorite things that I lean into all the time is like Vince Lombardi. He wrote this thing called Inches Makes Champions. So I don't know if you've ever heard that before. Have you ever heard that little snippet from him?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit of a blurb. I don't know if we have time for me to read it, but he basically just says to the Green Bay Packers, who had been on a 15 losing streak, that, and he got to take them over. And he said, you're good enough the way you are. All I need you to do is just a little bit more concentration, one extra push in practice. and a consistent second effort for a tiny additional gain. I just need you to go 1 inch farther each day. And so he just asked them to improve their best at an inch at a time, because he knew inches add up in life as in sports. So in life, as in football, it is often the little things that count. This is about going to meetings, when we feel like staying home or not getting online, or speaking our minds voice, no matter how insignificant our opinion may seem. When we feel like simply hiding, inches make the difference. Well, then he took them from going from that losing streak to win the world championship that next year.
Yeah. Of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Of course. And so here's I like to define it, when these are really soft skill topics, or emotional topics, I like to define what the takeaway is. So if you've listened this far for 34 minutes, give or take, what I want the takeaway to be is an understanding that there's going to be suffering as an entrepreneur. There's going to be suffering in our lives, but there's another side to that. And then there's plenty of help out there to get advice and support to get to the other side. And just know that the person sitting alongside of you probably has had their fair share of suffering too. And it's how we approach it. It's the tools that we have in play. It's the foundational elements that we put in place now, which again is one of the things I love about this group, is that we talk about the soft skills, which are building those foundational elements. You may have encountered things, and if depending on how long you've been in this group, you may have encountered things that just went right by you because they were of non-consequence, because you had the skill and the understanding to get through it, and it never became a thing, as opposed to somebody that doesn't have that soft skill and hasn't acquired the ability to get through it, right? And so just know that these tools are out there, and the takeaway again is to lean in on these things and know that you're not alone, and that suffering doesn't have to define you. It doesn't have to be long-term. And sometimes long-term or short-term could be a year. I'm just saying, like, it's not forever. Okay. It's not forever. Sometimes we have to chip away at those deeper wounds, or those deeper issues, or maybe those deeper financial troubles. But as long as you're working towards that solution using the tools that are available to you and leaning in, you'll overcome it. And yes, as Heidi just said, sometimes it takes a little bit more time because inches matter, right? Movement matters. One thing, I always say 5 minutes a day on that project, you'll get somewhere. You'll be able to look back and go, wow, 5 minutes a day resulted in this, which is quite a bit. Tell you, I mean, it works in all aspects. I've only been in the gym 8 days. I can't tell you how good I feel today after taking a few months off from the gym. 8 days. I'm going, what? Why did I even stop? I feel amazing, right? 8 days of consistently doing something, working towards my health, in the right direction. So, okay. I'm going to shift gears one more time. And it's one thing that Rod and I and Rachel all bring up, and we do it more probably on our own platforms and our text thread, is I want to really encourage everybody in this community to support one another in what they're doing. Okay. And if what you're doing isn't clear, or if you haven't clarified ways to be supported, please don't be afraid to do that in our text thread, or don't be afraid to reach out without, taking advantage of the opportunity, right? But as you may have seen in some of my recent posts, I've been very supportive of Heidi and some others in what they're doing, or reposting things, or asking that you guys repost stuff. This is a community. And as we wrap up 2024 and go into 2025, our strength is going to be in the community. And as this grows or stays the same, our strength is in one another and what we're doing and how we lift each other up and how we support each other. So it only takes a moment to repost something, to like something, to share something. And by the way, not only is that your own personal recognition of that, and maybe, adding the value of your followers to that like and share, but by liking and sharing, it does increase their algorithms too. And these are all free things that we can do to support one another. I would also encourage you is that if you have people in your life that could benefit from some of the things that are being offered in our group, personal training, whatever, marketing, all the things that people in our group do. Maybe send some business their way instead of going to the box store or somewhere, or what's easy in front of you. Maybe stretch a little bit and refer somebody in the community to help out. And let's help grow the business inside this community here. So I'm about ready to wrap up. Rod, what do you got? What say you, sir?
Well, I'll tell you what, Jim. Every day is a new day, and it's funny because the post I put on Instagram this morning at 3:20 a.m. was about building character, and what builds character is obstacles. We what defines us isn't the good stuff that happens to us. What defines who we are is the bad stuff that happens to us. That is what builds our character. And so we need to really embrace that, those growth opportunities. And so that brings this whole conversation around full circle. It's what we've overcome that gives us our strength, not the things we've accomplished, but what we've overcome. So as we look on to the new year and greater accomplishments, let's embrace the hardships that's coming along and know we can support each other in this group and our families.
I love it. Well, it's like I said, December 9th. If you're one of those people that like to have January 1st as your goal setting day or your kickoff of your new year, good for you. At least you got it. I started mine about 60 days ago. But if you're that person, let's lean in. Let's make sure that you have clear objectives for 2025. I think it's going to be probably one of the most incredible years in the history of this country for transition, change, financial success. I can feel it in the air, and I would highly encourage you to take advantage of that in the best possible way, right? Bring in value to others through your services, through your business, through what you do. And I really feel like you will see all the rewards of that. And sometimes that's not just financial, it's just opportunity to work with other people and help other people in whatever you do. So I'd really encourage you, if you haven't defined what that looks like for you, get after it so you hit the ground running on January 1st. And by the way, if you happen to do that homework now, the next couple of days, it's okay to start now. You don't have to wait for January 1st. You can start on December 11th at 4 p.m. because that's when you finished up writing your goals for 2025. You can start now. Earlier the better. You'll have 15-day head start, whatever that looks like. But just use this as a reminder that we have a new season upon us. Heidi, you get the floor.
On my website, it's actually in my link on Fierce Grace Wellness on Instagram, Linktree, that there is a playbook on how to set those goals for the New Year's for free. It's all there, a nice playbook.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you for offering that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
What's fiercegracewellness.com?
Or just go to Instagram. It just go there. Fierce Grace Wellness on Instagram. Then you click on the bio or whatever there, Linktree, and it's right there. It pops right up. How to
Okay.
New Year goals.
Awesome. All right. Rod and I have, with a lot of momentum now, re-ramped up our podcast. I think I've got 11 in the can now, including ours, Rod, and ours, Heidi. If you've got topics you want us to cover, we'd love to do it. If you would please, in the spirit of helping, subscribe, like, share, whatever. You don't have to do every one because we do one a week, but it would be nice to get some momentum on those as well. It's a labor of love, and we do love doing it. Right, Rod?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I'm going to wrap it up. It's awesome to see everybody on the call tonight. If you are listening to this at a later date, please take some notes. You feel free to reach out. If you got questions, we're here for you. And yeah, that's it. And let me just say one last thing. Sorry about the time change. I lead my business with my values, and tonight was my night to lead the call. And I'm serving at a new church that's been organized here in Flathead County. And we have had a venue donated to us basically on Monday nights at 6:30. And I'm leading the security team as part of my value. Samantha is doing all their marketing and their website and all that other stuff is her value. And we need to be there a little bit early to help with all that. And so obviously there's a conflict on that 6 p.m. start time. So thank you for understanding. And I'm hoping that I'm leading by example by asking for a change in the time of the call tonight and all that good stuff. So anyways, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
All right.
Jim.
Have an awesome night, day, whatever you're doing. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.